Yasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshormilitanjena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Tvise Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshri Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Okay, so we are continuing with our reading of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Hidden Treasure of the Sweet Absolute. And we're here in Budapest, Hungary, with our devotional family members. So we are in near the beginning of chapter 3, and we are around verse 17, I believe, and the topic is Karma Yoga, and we left off where Krishna was describing how, generally in the Vedic system, the Varnashram system of India, there is this awareness of the natural order that is flowing within the environment, and the way of life is designed to respect the natural order of things. So there is honor given to the devas, who are providing the rain and the sun and all of these things, the earth. And so when one goes to eat, one will eat in the consciousness of from what source this came from, like this. And therefore there is sacrifice offered to the devas, because they are the maintainers, the caretakers of this world. This is the general Vedic system. This is a little different from Krishna consciousness, where everything is focused on the essential, most original source. Krishna is described as Sarva Karana Karanam. Karana means cause. So Krishna is Karana Karanam. He is the cause of all causes. So the devas are like the cause of many systems in this world, but Krishna, he is the cause of those causes. So in that first verse of Brahma Samhita, Krishna is referred to like that. Sarva means all, complete. So of all causes, he is the original cause. Sarva Karana Karanam. Okay, so we'll pick up with, so we're top of page 56. So maybe I'm the only one with this edition. Yeah. We all have different page numbers. So we'll start with verse 16 in chapter 3. We can chant the Sanskrit together. Evam pravartitam chakram nanuvartayati haya agayor indriyaramo mogam partha sajivati. O Arjuna, one who does not respect this natural causal cycle leads a life of sin, enjoying the senses in vain. So if one is independently enjoying the resources of this world without honoring the source, then one has to be responsible for the exploitation that they are creating there. So 17, and maybe we'll chant 3 verses. It's kind of nice to get into the flow of the Sanskrit. So maybe we'll chant 3 verses together. We were doing that when we were in America just now. Yastvatmaratir eva syad atmachittascha manavaha atmanyeva cha santushtas tasya karyam na vidyate. Naiva tasya krite narto na krite neha kaschana nachasya sarvabhuteshu kaschadarta vyapayashaha tasmada shakta satatam karyam karma samachara asakto yacharan karma paramapnoti purushaha. Yet there is no duty to fulfill for the realized person who delights within the self, being fully satisfied within. His only worldly action or karma is as required for his subsistence. So this is a very important point here, that karma or our reactions, they come to us not as a result of the actual activity, but as a result of our consciousness. So if we are engaging in an activity that apparently is exploitative, but we are not doing it with a consciousness of exploitation, then we will not have to face any consequences of that. If our activity is not coming from selfishness, then we won't have to pay any reaction for what that is. No. If we are not in that spirit of selfish enjoyment, exploitation, self-interest, then there's no debt. The debt comes from here, from our consciousness, not from the actual activity. So the self-realized. So this is an important component of what karma yoga is. That we are doing our activity, we're continuing with our normal duties and activities, but we're doing so with a detached mindset. We're doing it for the sake of the good of the whole, out of a sense of duty. We're not doing it for our own self-motivated interest. So we don't have to face any reaction for that. So that person, the realized person, so this is real detachment. Artificial detachment means to renounce activity, but internally the attachment is there. That's not real detachment. Real detachment is when you can continue with all the same activities, but internally you have some detachment. You're not in that mood of self-centeredness. So his only worldly action is he only takes what he needs for his bare sustenance in this world. So there's no question of reaction of karma. And then in the world, 18, in the world he neither gains by action nor loses by inaction. Because he's not living on the surface. Normally we're living on the surface, like we were just talking about the senses, right? That we may lose in different situations, health conditions or accidents or whatever, we may lose the power of some of our senses, hearing, sound, smell, touch, all of these things. And as we were saying, that would be something very, very difficult. That is something very difficult to live with. And why? Because we identify with the world of the senses. So if we lose the senses, then it's very challenging for us, But someone who's not identifying with the senses, they're not so disturbed if they have or they don't have. It doesn't make so much difference to them because they're identifying with the deeper plane, with the soul plane. So they're not living on that superficial world of the chaos of this objective world, this happening and that happening, and etc., etc. The duality of this world. They're not living on that plane. So they don't gain by action or lose by inaction. They do not depend on any other being, from Lord Brahma down to the simplest life form, for any purpose. So this is Krishna advising Arjuna, so perform your prescribed duties without attachment. By selflessly executing one's duties, a person attains liberation. True liberation is the state of pure devotion, attained in the maturity of selfless action. So, as we were mentioning earlier on, I think, in Bhagavad Gita, there's, Bhagavad Gita, it can be read in two ways, there's like kind of this more literal meaning or interpretation, which is moving in a step-by-step progressive way, where karma yoga is described, then jnana yoga, then ashtanga yoga, and finally bhakti yoga. There's these stages of development, and Bhagavad Gita can be appreciated in that light. But on another level, you can find the teachings of bhakti, you can apply the teachings of bhakti, or you can interpret these things in a devotional light at every step. So for example, this teaching of karma yoga, on one level, Krishna is just talking about karma yoga, selfless action. But on another level, these principles are also applicable in the practice of bhakti. Ordinarily karma yoga, right? It means not acting with any selfishness, acting selflessly. And then that's also applicable in bhakti, but there's the additional mood of acting for Krishna. It's not only that you're acting without selfish interest, but there's a plus there. So there's, karma yoga is minus selfishness, and then bhakti yoga is minus selfishness, but plus Krishna-ish. Krishnaness. So bhakti is minus self-interest, but it's plus Krishna interest, we can say like that. So we see how these teachings are also very helpful in the practice of bhakti. In verse 20, King Janaka and other learned personalities succeeded in attaining devotion through the execution of their prescribed duties. So it is fitting that you fulfill your duty in consideration of the welfare of the people. So you don't in other words, you don't have to give up your day-to-day duties and obligations. Rather you can use those same duties, which are apparently material. They can become a means of your liberation. It's all about your consciousness. There's one analogy given maybe in Srimad Bhagavatam of how milk is a food that tends to upset people's stomachs. It can happen, it happens with milk. It's not so uncommon. But that same milk, if you prepare it in a different way, it becomes yogurt. And yogurt is known as a food that people take that soothes your stomach, right? That is the nature of yogurt. So in the same way, normally activity, it's binding us in this world. But if we use action with the proper mentality, then it actually become a means of liberation from karma, freedom from karma. Okay, so we're on. Maybe we didn't chant verse 20. Actually, I forgot. Jumped ahead. So we'll chant 20 to 22. Karma naiva hi samsiddhim astita janakadeyaha loka sangrahamevapi sampashyan kartamarhasi yad yadacharati sheshtas tattare vetaro janaha sayad pramanam kurute lokastad anuvartate name partashti kartavyam jishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptam avaptavyam varte vacha karmani. So we read 20 already, and then 21. The masses follow the ways of great men, following the standards they set. O Arjuna, I have no duty in the three worlds. I lack nothing, and there is nothing to be attained by me. And yet, I myself am active. So even if you think you are above your duty, you should still engage, even if you think, oh, I don't need to do any duty. I'm already a great, liberated, realized soul. I don't need to follow all these things that the common people do. You know? Even if you think you're on that level, you still have to do it to set an example for others. You know? And so verse 21, Giridhara, you recognize that verse? It's a famous verse, 21. There's a special story connected with this verse. Yad yad acharati sheshtas tatta devetaro jana sayat pramanam krute lokastada navartade. When Srila Sridhar Maharaj came to join the Gaudiya Math, then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur chanted this verse, you know, because he was recognizing and he was pleased that Srila Sridhar Maharaj came from a very high family. You know, they were, I don't remember what class of Brahmins, but because even, you know, we hear of the caste system, right? Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras. We hear the Brahmins are the highest, but even within the class of Brahmins, there are many subdivisions, and so there are higher Brahmins and there are lower Brahmins. You know, there are some Brahmins who are not treated very well, actually. They're treated with not so much respect. You know, it's a very complicated system. But Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he came from a very high Brahmin lineage. And, you know, and they were very educated, very cultured people. They used to speak Sanskrit in their daily household life, you know. And so, you know, very, very, you know, high-class people. And actually, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, his caste was a little lower. And some people had some prejudice about that, you know. So it was helpful for Srila Saraswati Thakur to have people like Srila Sridhar Maharaj in his mission. And another person like that was Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj, that his family line, it's called Nityananda Vamsha. You know, he was in the line of Nityananda Prabhu. Maybe the bloodline. I don't remember. Maybe the bloodline, but it may have been a disciplic succession. But anyhow, it was a very highly respected lineage in the line of Nityananda Prabhu. This is Goswami Maharaj, and he was very helpful in the. Like if there was some problem, like some people were creating problems for the mission, then sometimes Saraswati Thakur would send Goswami Maharaj to take care of it, because everyone respected him so much. You know, so also someone like Srila Sridhar Maharaj, it gave some credibility, it gave some dignity to the mission, and so Srila Saraswati Thakur, he quoted this verse, you know, saying that if someone like you is coming to this mission, then the common people, they will pay attention, because the tendency of the common people is to follow what the more advanced or famous, powerful people, what they do. The general people, they don't know so much what is right, what is wrong. Their tendency is to follow, you know. You know, like nowadays, you know, it's like the movie stars and the sports stars and the rock stars, right? People, what they do, you know, what they wear, what they eat, you know, the general influence. That's right. Influencers. There's a whole culture of influencers, right? It's funny how there's no shame about it even. It's just that's the way life is. Yeah, there's the influencers and the people who follow the influencers. There isn't even any shyness about that. One of our devotees in Mexico, she's an influencer. She's got 15,000 followers, and she gets all these things for free. Companies send her all these things. So anyhow, so Saraswati Thakur was pleased. Oh, someone like of this stature, they can be of great help to our mission. Let's see. Where are we now? We're in 23. Yadi hyaham navarteyam jatu karmanya tandritaha mama vartmanu vartante manushya partha sarvashaha utsidayori me loka nakuryam karma cheraham sankarasya chakartasyam upahanyami ma prajaha sakta karmanya vidvamso yata kurvanti bharata Kuryad vidvams tata shaktas chikishor loka sangraham. O Arjuna, if ever I do not engage attentively in duties, then all men following my example will give up their duties. If I do not engage in duty, the people of these worlds will renounce their duties and fall to ruination. Thus I will be responsible for their downfall, caused by adulterated progeny. O Arjuna, as ignorant persons work with attachment, the wise too must work, but without attachment, in order to guide the general people who exist in the plane of worldly action. They differ not in their work, but in their attitudes of attachment and detachment. So, we can take as a high example, someone like our Guru Dev, these great Vaishnavas. They don't need to follow, the standard rules and regulations, but for our sake, they follow these things. They. Like our Gurudev, taking sannyas, he doesn't need to take sannyas, and following the whole, daily schedule of missionary life in our temples, fasting on particular days and all these things, the Paramahamsa Vaishnavas, they don't need to follow these things, but they do so for our benefit, to show us the example. That is the meaning of acharya. The word achar means one's conduct, one's behavior. So acharya means one who teaches by example, by their conduct. They are teaching us, what is the proper way. So they themselves, and we can appreciate that example even in a simple way, like a parent sometimes, right? Or a teacher. Because sometimes a parent may tell their child, oh, don't do this, but the child will say, but you're doing it. Then the parent has to show themselves, they're also following this, Or maybe the child has some ADHD and they can't take sugar. And so the mother will say, oh, you cannot take any, but mom, you're taking sugar. So how can you tell me not to take sugar, Then the mother, if she wants to really show a good example, then she also has to stop, There's one story like that. I'm trying to remember. Srila Swami Maharaj told that story. That there was a mother who, I think it was actually sugar. Had a child who was taking so much sugar. And I think Swami Maharaj Prabhupada told this story, and then she went, and she tried so many things, but her child wouldn't stop, And then she went to, I can't remember who she went, maybe it was to Buddha. I think this might be a Buddhist story. You heard this story?
She went to Gandhi.
Oh, it was Gandhi. It was you heard that story too. Maybe Janardhan Maharaj told that story. Okay, maybe it was Gandhi. And oh, please, will you tell my son? If you will tell my son, then he will really listen. And then Gandhi said, come back after 3 days. And then I will tell him. Okay, and then she came back after 3 days. And then he said, you stop taking sugar. And then the mother wanted to know, why didn't you just tell him before? And he said, because I was also eating too much sugar. So I had to stop myself, and then I could tell, So that case is a little different, That's more a case of, that our requests to others, or our outreach, they have more potency if we're practicing ourselves. This is slightly different point here. They're more like along the lines of hypocrisy, right? Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, he had that expression, right? Purity is the force, right? Do you remember the full expression? Books are the basis. It was like 3 or 4 things. You remember that, right? You must know. It's very famous. In ISKCON, it's very famous. Books are the basis. Purity is the force. Preaching is the essence, I think. And maybe there was one more. But that point is very nice. Purity is the force. That how much we ourselves are practicing, to that extent, when we are telling others, there will be power in our words. If what we're saying is not just lip deep, but there's actually the potency of our own practice behind, then that will touch people. Otherwise, because we're not just giving people information, it's not just a brain transaction. But if we have real faith ourselves and we are practicing what we're speaking about, that will touch people. It is more subtle, but it is more powerful. But the point here is a little different. These are persons who are already, situated on a higher plane. They're beyond the plane of practice. Okay, so verse, we'll chant 26, 27, 28. Na buddhi bedam janayad agyanam karma sanginam yojayat sarva karmani vidvan yukta samacharam prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudatma kartahamiti manyate tattvavitu mahabaho gunakarma vibhagayo gunaguneshu vartanta iti matvana sajate. So 26, the scripturally learned teacher should not create confusion in the minds of ignorant, attached men by apparently advocating the neglect of duty for the cultivation of knowledge. Rather, he should set the example of selflessness in fulfilling duties, thus encouraging the ignorant in the performance of their prescribed duties. 27. All actions in the world are in every respect affected by the modes of material nature, which impel the senses. But a man deluded by bodily identification thinks, I alone am accomplishing this work. So this is this verse 27. It's quite a famous verse. Everything that takes place in this world, all action, it's happening by the forces of the Lord's energies. So even our own activity, the activities of our senses, they are being impelled by the modes of nature, right? The modes of passion, ignorance, and goodness, passion, and ignorance. These energies, they're stimulating our senses and causing us to act in different ways. But we, our ego, our ahankara, right? This is the word ahankara, vimudatma means like bewildered by, deluded by. So ahankara vimudatma, we are, when we are deluded by the ahankara, by the false ego, then the ego, it's like this cloud, like this haze, and that's all we can see. And it's I, me, and mine. So we think that we are doing everything, and we are the controller of everything. But actually, everything is happening by these different energies of the Lord in the environment. However, O mighty armed Arjuna, one who is in knowledge of the division of the modes of material nature and action, knows that the modes are engaging within the modes, and he is detached from them. One who knows that the three modes activated by the demigods impel the engagement of the senses with their objects, knows himself to be independent of these elements. Therefore, he does not consider himself a doer. See, we can also think of it as like if we think of it as like some like pad. Where isn't it? Or we can also take the example of something like just some cloth, right? Like it's composed of many threads, right? And when the weaving is very tight, it looks just like one thing, right? But if the threads are separated, you'll see that there's actually many distinct entities here, right? So in the same way, there are many layers that are covering us, right? They're comprising us, let's say. There are many, we are comprised, our current existence is comprised of many different layers. So most inherently there's the soul, and then the soul is covered by the false ego, and then more gross than the false ego is the intellect, the plane of the intellect. Then a little more gross is the mental plane. Then there's the plane of the senses. And then there's the gross physical world, right? Including our body. So at the moment, all of these like separating layers, they're very tightly bound up. So we're not feeling the distinction. But if there's some space, if there's some space there, just like in this cloth, if the threads are separated, you'll see they are all distinct entities, So in the same way, we are very bound, all these layers are bound up tightly in this knot. And we are conceiving of everything at once as ourselves. But if things are separated, we'll see, now what's acting now is my mind. Oh, what's acting now is my intellect. Oh, what's acting now is my ego. Oh, what's acting now is my soul. Then we'll see these are distinct entities, distinct layers. But when we are in a very conditioned state, it's all very tightly bound up, and we cannot see these different layers, and we're all conceiving of it all as one entity, as ourself, as this is who I am. Where's that? Yeah, so like, that one who's liberated or in the process of moving towards liberation, they will sit back and watch. Oh, now the mode of passion is stimulating me. And I want to go running, or I want to listen to this music, or whatever it may be, And now the mode of goodness is affecting me, and I feel like meditating, or doing yoga, or whatever it may be, right? And we'll see. oh, now the mode of passion is affecting me and I'm becoming very angry, or now I'm feeling peaceful, or now I'm feeling sleepy because the mode of ignorance is affecting me, like that. We'll see these different energies playing upon us, But when we don't have that awareness and that distance, we are identifying with those things and acting on them in every instant. So happy, sad, angry, sleepy, hungry, we're conceiving, I am happy, I am sad, I am angry, etc., etc. But the realized soul is seeing, oh, my mind is angry right now. My mind is being stimulated by the mode of passion and is angry right now. So there's that space, from who we are, the real I within us, and these things that are playing upon our consciousness. It's interesting, in some cultures, there you see sometimes there's this practice of referring to oneself in the third person, and it's funny because I don't know if they do that in India, but Ananda Rupa's son, he speaks like that sometimes. Is Sham. His father was telling me, that he'll speak about like Sham. I think he said he always refers to himself like that. Like Sham wants this or Sham wants that. Like he's feeling this distance from this entity of Sham. This is funny. Actually, it's interesting how, like in the Anglo culture, the I is very, very strong. Like what you were mentioning the other day, how in Hungary the traditional way of writing out an address is first you put the bigger place first, right? So, because normally, like in America or Britain, you start from the place most connected with yourself, the smallest, moving towards the biggest. So you put your name, then you put the address, and then you put the street, then you put the post, then you put the county, and the country you put last, right? But in Hungary, you do it the other way around. So maybe now it's changed. I don't know. But traditionally it was like that.
Think of our name too. Our family name is the first.
Yeah.
You emphasize the family you come from, and then your own name.
I think this is because the Hungarian language is hierarchical. Everything is what is the topmost position, like the date. We write year, month, day. Because if we start the date with like 5, nobody knows what 5. But if I say 1982, oh, they have some idea already what's going on. So the name is the same from the tribe, the family.
Yeah.
The address also the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very, very straightforward actually.
Yeah.
Those American things, they are very confusing.
Yeah.
You read 256 and you don't know what is that.
Still in Hungary, you put the year first?
Yeah.
You still do it like that, huh? Yeah. But yeah, so just making this point that this mentality of starting with the broader connotation, right? Not the first connotation is not ourself, but the first connotation is a collective connotation, right? Like what you said about the name also, that's something that you see in many cultures. Like in South India in particular, they still now like Suvasini Didi, when she writes out her name, first you put the last. It's very confusing. It gets very confusing for me. But and I've seen it in other Asian cultures too, that first you'll put the last name, and then you say the last name first when you're addressing the person, and then you say their first name. So there's that connection with the broader, collective connotation. That's the first connection, the first consideration. How did I get onto that? I've forgotten. I don't know how I got onto that. We were talking about the modes of nature. I don't know how that was relevant. Somehow it was. But
started with the I.
Oh yeah, that's right. It was a bit of a tangent. Yeah, how the I is very strong, right? And that's more in Anglo-Western cultures. Even like in the way English is constructed, I is first. Like you need the I. I don't know about Hungarian, but in many other languages you don't speak like that. You don't need to say the I. It's included, yeah, in Hungarian also. Like if you're like in Bengali, it is in Spanish. You don't need to say that. You don't need to say the I. Like the emphasis is more on like the activity or the object of activity, but you don't need to put the I. No.
Not in capital letter. in English.
Right. But in English, if you like, even sometimes, like I feel embarrassed. Like I'm always saying I, But if you drop it, it can sound a little rude actually, because it doesn't work so well, That's just the way the language is made. It's interesting. My mother told me that once she came in to visit Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and she said that Gurudev used to receive Srila Sridhar Maharaj's mail, and of course there were a few secretaries, but on this occasion Gurudev was going through the mail, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj had told, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj was seated there, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj had told our Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj, to count how many eyes were in the letter. All the letters he was going through, Srila Sridhar Maharaj asked him to count how many eyes were in there. But it's actually difficult to avoid in English, It's interesting. It's humanism. There's a strong, now in the Western culture, there's this very strong, society's moving away from like a God-centered consciousness to this humanistic, individualistic consciousness, where the I is more important than the we, Whereas more traditionally, even in Western cultures, the we is first, right? The we is first. That's the main point I wanted to make, with the address and the names. It's the I versus the we, Of course, the I is also important, but the we should be first. The we is more important than the I. Anyway, we're going way off topic. It's an interesting point, to think about. So maybe we'll just read a few more verses. So I think we're on verse 30, is that? 29. Prakrite guna samuda sajante guna karmasu tana kritsna vido mandan kritsna vinna vichalayat mayi sarvani karmani Sanyasyadhyatma cetasa nirashir nirmamo bhutva yudyasva vigatajaraha eme matam midam nityam anutishtanti manavaha shadavanto nasuyanto muchyante tepi karmibihi. Persons bewildered by the modes of nature are absorbed in the functions of the modes, the engagement of the senses with their objects. Enlightened persons should not agitate such ignorant, unfortunate persons by trying to convince them of higher philosophical truths. Rather, they should advise the conditioned souls to practice selfless action, which liberates them from absorption in the modes. Surrender all your activities to me with this understanding. All my actions are under the control of the indwelling Lord. In such consciousness, free from possessiveness and anguish, take recourse to battle as your natural duty. Faithful, unbegrudging men who always practice my teaching, this yoga of selfless action, are liberated from the bondage of action, even though they engage in action. And this point 29, it's quite helpful in our dealings with others. We can take from here that we don't always need to feel the need to explain everything or convince everyone, right? We have to let people move forward at their own pace. So just by having them engaged in some type of progressive activity, that's enough. You don't need to explain everything perfectly to them, or convince them. You don't need to sit and argue with them and try to force them to understand, finer points, but have them take some prasadam, or wash some dishes, or whatever, and let them gradually, progress. Like another example of that, maybe a slightly different vein, is Narada Muni, when he meets that hunter, right, who's killing animals, who's half killing animals, right? And he's just a very, very degraded, wicked person. He's a hunter by profession, but for just for fun, he tortures the animals and he shoots them with his arrow in such a way so that they're seriously injured, but they don't die. So they're half dead, half alive, suffering, and this man gets pleasure out of that, So obviously this man is very far gone. You can't come and preach to him about, living a good life, or becoming a devotee of Krishna. He's far off track. So you can't come and lecture him about everything he should be doing, because it would just be too much of a big jump. So then what does Narada do? Narada tells him, please, I humbly request you, please kill the animals completely. Because that's better than half killing them. He doesn't tell him, become a vegetarian, ahimsa, paramadharma. He doesn't tell him all of that. That would be too much of a jump. So he says, please, just at least if you need to kill animals for your livelihood, kill them completely. Try to minimize their pain, And then he explains, there's the law of karma, and you will, as you have given this pain to others, you will also have to take that for yourself, right? And that's also like a kind of a base instruction. Karma is something that is something for persons of a low mentality to be worried about, right? That's not really real. That's not how you would speak to a more advanced person. Don't do bad things because bad will come back to you. That's a very basic way to live. Is that the only reason why you shouldn't do bad things? No. But to a very base person, that's how you have to speak to them, Don't deal drugs or you'll go to prison. That's the only reason you can tell them to not. You're going to get in trouble, right? So anyway, Narada just tells him these very basic, like elementary instructions. And that's the beginning. And then that hunter hears that, and he gets some consciousness. And then through the association with Narada, he becomes inspired to give everything up, and live a more pure and clean life, But when Narada first approaches him, he doesn't give him higher teachings. He gives him very basic, elementary, grade 1 teachings, because that's all he can hear at that point, So or another way of saying it is, you don't have to show all your cards right on the table. Don't reveal all your cards in the first game. Show 1 or 2, and then as the game unfolds, then you can start showing another few, Okay, well, let's see. I'll just read. Maybe we'll just read. Where did we finish? Did we finish on 31? I think we did. Yeah. So I'll read up to 34, and then 35 has more of a discussion around it, so we can save it for next week. Okay, so we'll just 32, 33, 34. Ye tad abhyasuyanto nanutishtanti me matam sarvagyana vimudam stan vidinashtana chetasaha sajisham cheshtate swasya prakriter jnanavanapi prakritim yanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyati indriyasyarte ragadvesho vyavastito toyornavasham agachet tohyasya paripantino. But the arrogant who resent my teaching are bereft of all knowledge. Know them to be lost in ignorance. For even a knowledgeable person tends to act according to their nature, mundane inclinations. The living beings' endeavors are dictated by their natures. What then can repression accomplish? Although the senses are attracted to and repelled by the sense objects, one must not be controlled by these urges, for they are the greatest enemy of the candidate for self-realization. Okay, we can stop there. Any last comments from anyone? Okay, Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Do you want to chant, Maheshwari?
No.
Okay. Do you want to chant?
Yeah.
Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha
Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha